effectively in the future. Today, I'll be providing a brief presentation highlighting some early insights from a research project we conducted within the GSMA on the role of mobile operators in the smart cities ecosystem in low and middle income countries. Then I'll be joined by an amazing panel from leaders from both the mobile operator and startup ecosystem from across African and Asian countries. And then we'll have another panel looking at the role that regulators and governments are playing in governing the smart cities ecosystem in low and middle income countries, and how we can also safeguard citizens against some of the risks associated with disruptive innovation. Now, a very brief overview of what we do within the GSMA Mobile for Development program and the GSMA Digital Utilities program more specifically. So you'll know the GSMA since you're here at Mobile World Congress, but the GSMA Mobile for Development program leverages digital innovation to drive different sustainable development goals. We're supported by our members, the mobile industry, but also by a range of different donor organizations, especially for our program, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO. In Mobile for Development, we have teams looking at a range of different development challenges like humanitarian innovation, agri-tech, climate tech, digital inclusion, mobile money. The Digital Utilities program that I'm part of supports urban resilience in low and middle income countries by enabling access to essential utility services, so digital solutions and innovative partnerships. We really think that inclusive access to utility services such as energy, water, sanitation, waste management, and increasingly also transport is critical for cities to withstand the pressures from population growth, climate change, as well as widening inequalities. The way we work is we facilitate grant funding to innovators through our GSMA Innovation Fund. This is a key part of our work, and I'll touch on that briefly afterwards. We also do a lot of research and insights to better understand the developmental and commercial impact of some of the innovations that we support, as well as what we see in the broader ecosystem. Thirdly, we also do a lot of partnership facilitation. So we support startups in low and middle income countries to build partnerships with mobile operators. But increasingly, we're also looking at other strategic partnerships such as startup corporate partnerships or partnerships between governments and startups as well. Finally, the last pillar of our work is technical advice. So we provide a lot of advice and expertise to municipalities, utility service providers, and also startups on how to integrate different digital innovations. That can be a very basic use case, like if I'm a service provider, how do I actually get my customer base to take up digital payments? How do I overcome some of the product design or affordability barriers that may prevent people from leveraging digital payments, to more sophisticated use cases such as AI or IoT as well. Just a couple of highlights from our GSMA Innovation Fund. We provide funding to a range of different use cases. So we've dispersed around £26 million to over 130 organizations over the course of the Innovation Fund. The innovations that we've supported have impacted over 65 million people. And what's quite exciting for us is they've raised over £670 million in follow-on funding. So what's key for us is that the Innovation Fund, it's not just a grant project that then just ends, but that it continues to raise follow-on funding and actually becomes a commercially sustainable delivery model that keeps attracting private investment. So we're quite proud of that figure in particular. And then finally, we've also been able to build 108 partnerships between mobile operators and the startups that we supported through the Innovation Fund. Now, some sneak peeks, insights from our study on smart cities that will likely be published in May, kind of giving you an idea what the market opportunity for smart city solutions looks like in low and middle income countries. So the first thing to kind of understand here, appreciate here is the IoT layers that mobile operators can get involved in when it comes to smart city solutions. And what do I mean by smart city solutions? The term always gets thrown around, but let's demystify it a bit. So this could, for instance, mean a smart metering project for an energy utility. And in those projects, there are different values that you can derive from the project. There's the application layer, there's the connectivity layer, and then there's the device layer. And each of those layers have different value chains and different economic opportunities associated with it for mobile operators. If I now look at the revenue projections from our study, you'll see what's not so important right now is the level that the revenues are in right now. You can see for some regions they're still quite low. But if you look at the compound annual growth rate for the revenue projections in the Smart Cities Solutions ecosystem, you'll see that for a region like Sub-Saharan Africa, the compound annual growth rate is 21%. For South Asia, where these solutions are already much more advanced and digitalization generally is already at a higher level, especially when it comes to smart city solutions, you see a 33% compound annual growth rate. And this is obviously also due to the fact that, for instance, in India, the Indian government has this huge smart cities mission that invests heavily in these solutions, and it also has clear targets, for instance, for energy utilities to implement a number of smart meters until 2030, which is why the growth is more accentuated there. Now, let's break this revenue down a bit into different layers. And what you'll see is that actually the connectivity layer is clearly the smallest piece of the pie. What's far more important is the platform layer. And this is also where you see the highest compound annual growth rate from now until 2030. So this is just an important lesson for mobile operators as they transition from being just a connectivity provider to being a value-added service provider. A lot of the economic opportunities actually at the platform layer. And you'll see this is similar across other markets. There are some regional differences between like Pakistan and Malaysia. Malaysia has a bit of a higher connectivity share than Pakistan, but the picture holds everywhere. And especially in African countries like Nigeria and Kenya, we see the platform layer being particularly important. Now, if you look at the evolution of the role of mobile operators in the smart cities ecosystem, you know, if you look from 2010, that was the kind of connectivity-centric period, to now, in the present time, and especially up until 2030, mobile operators increasingly are becoming turnkey solution providers that are going beyond just connectivity providers and are developing real smart city platforms. And we'll hear a bit more about this, obviously, in the panel discussions as well. So I don't want to go too deep into that, but the panels will reveal that transition and also how mobile operators are thinking about this transition going forward in their future strategy. Now, just highlighting one example of Celcom Digi in Malaysia and their smart city project in Hulu Kelang. What's quite interesting about this project that it really illustrates this turnkey solution provider business model where an operator is providing value at the infrastructure layer, at the innovation layer, as well as at the governance layer. That obviously requires a lot of sophistication on the level of the mobile operator. You need to have a strong government relations team. You need to have a strong data analysis, AI and IoT team. But this is what you can do if you want to engage in these growing opportunities. And Malaysia obviously is another country where the government has set clear targets for multiple cities to become smart cities from now until 2050, and it's obviously actively looking for a technology partner to help it deliver on its vision, which is why it's exciting that operators like Celcom Digi are positioning themselves to do so. Now, I won't go too deep into this because the panels will discuss this a bit more, but just to obviously highlight some of the challenges involved with getting involved in the smart cities ecosystem as a mobile operator. I think one is that it usually requires quite a high upfront investment on the part of the operator, and the return on investment isn't immediate. So you really have to take a long-term view, and as sometimes operators can be a bit short-termist and driven by short-term shareholder value maximization, this long-termism can be a challenge. Another one is governance uncertainty, right? We all know that some governments might announce some exciting smart city projects and certain partnerships, but when governments change, do those plans also change? How does that impact existing contracts? So governance and regulatory uncertainty, I think, is another key barrier. There's some others that I could go into, but we will, as I mentioned, publish an extensive report on the matter. I just end by saying that in order to overcome these, mobile operators really need to strategically look at the smart cities sort of smart cities opportunity and integrate it into their future strategies. So operators are already building a lot of sophistication on AI and IoT. I think another area where that sophistication needs to be built is also in terms of governance relations, being able to negotiate with local governments to have favorable terms. But it's definitely an area that a lot of operators across Africa and Asia that we interviewed from the study are investing heavily in, especially in middle-income countries like South Africa in the African context, as well as India and Malaysia in the Asia region. So now I would like to stop talking myself and hand over to the experts that are going to demystify the smart cities concept even more and talk a bit more about how mobile operators and startups are actively involved in the ecosystem. So moderating this panel will be Akanksha Sharma, who is the head of our climate tech and digital utilities programs at the GSMA. She'll be joined by Amy Robinson, head of digital at Basigo, a Kenyan startup. Also joining them will be Fred Waithaka, who is the Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at Safaricom. And last but not least, Abhishek Biswal, who is the Chief Business Officer at Airtel. Over to you, Akanksha.
Am I audible? Awesome. Thank you, George. And I saw that presentation for the first time, so some very exciting stats that have come through, also thanks to the GSMA intelligence team who've inputted into the research piece. Kenijay is standing at the back, is one of the authors of the report. I am glad to have this amazing panel with me today. As I think George was talking about, cities are a complex organism, if we can put it that way. They are powerhouses of human progress, achievements, that's the epicenters where all of this happens. And when you throw in the phrase smart cities, you're essentially talking about entirety of that system to somehow become more efficient, smarter, more productive, perhaps. And that is not something easy to achieve, because not only are you thinking about a systems change, but the individual components of that system need to evolve in parallel and in tandem with the systemic change. Very, very complex. And then you have the different layers of stakeholders that you're dealing with, governance, structures that keep changing. There is potentially a government that launches a new program, 5 years later, 3 years later, suddenly gets stopped. There's private sector involved, and they're like waiting for what to do. And several, in today's world, several macroeconomic changes that affect cities as well. So it's a very, very complex topic to indulge in. So I congratulate you, first of all, in the fact that you are taking on the challenge. But I think I'll start with you, Amy, because it'd be good to kind of start with a sector, a particular innovation that Basigo has decided to tackle. So tell us more about the innovation and the fun bits, and then we'll get into the difficult bits a little later.
Yeah, no problem. Great. Well, thanks for having us, and yeah, thanks for inviting Basigo to attend here. So what are we doing? Our core product is an electric bus. And we are providing that on a pay-as-you-drive basis, so you pay per kilometer that you drive. So we work with existing bus operators within Kenya and Rwanda. They pay a deposit of around $8,000 for the bus, and then they pay 50 cents per kilometer. For that, we give them the bus to use, and we provide the charging infrastructure. So we're setting up charging infrastructure in conjunction with, government entities, KPLC, the Kenyan power providers. So we're setting that up across Nairobi and across Kigali in Rwanda. And then we also provide the service and maintenance for the vehicles. As you know, there is a There is not so much experience already for electric vehicles. And then, our story so far. So we started in 2021, and then we had the first bus on the ground February 23 in Kenya. Then we started operations in Rwanda at the end of 2023. So we ended 2023 with 17 buses in Kenya and 6 in Rwanda. And then at the end of last year, we were up to 49 buses in total across the fleet. So, yeah, we've seen a huge interest. We have a waiting list of around 900 just in Kenya alone. And in Rwanda, we're working very closely with the government there, as the mobility sector is highly controlled, regulated. And so there's a big opportunity for just transitioning buses to electric as the diesel buses, start to get off the roads. So that's on the kind of core offering side. And then in addition to that, we're doing digital fare collection. So this is really where we're working very closely with Safaricom and really trying to formalize and digitize really one of the kind of last bastions of cash industries in Africa. There's a lot of people moving around the city every day, and they're still paying cash. And this is really one of the largest individual sectors that hasn't really been digitized yet in Kenya. And there's a big opportunity to make it easier for passengers, make it safer, make it more predictable, and really gain those insights into the industry so that we can start to evolve it and revolutionize it and be truly smart.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And how has this partnership been with the digital providers as you've gone along? How has that journey been?
Yeah, I think right now we're kind of just benefiting from existing infrastructure. You still have to do a lot of behavior change, maybe more so with the operators than the passengers. Passengers, people in, if you don't know, if you haven't been, people in Kenya in particular, there's a high adoption for digital payments. It was really the start of all of the digital payment services in Africa, and Safaricom led that charge. So the passengers are using it, they know how to use it, they're engaged. For the operators, this is an industry that has been running for a long time by the same people, and they haven't really had to challenge their ways of working so much. So that's really the big challenge that we see. So we're working with Safaricom on figuring out, how do we provide different tools that the bus operators find valuable, that they are encouraged then to adopt these kind of digital fare collection methods.
Got it. Yeah, it's often, cash brings with it the safety challenge, and that is one driver often for some of these industries where they're like, okay, let's go cashless, safer modes of transferring money, but at the same time, there is a secondary economy that runs, which gets impacted. But let's move on to you, Fred. Safaricom was just named as a supporter of Basigo. Besides transport, or including transport, what are some of the smart cities projects that Safaricom is supporting?
Thanks for that. So I think I'll just kick off first from where Amy left off. So we are a strong part of our community. Safaricom's purpose is to transform lives. And everything that we do is geared towards delivering that outcome. So when M-Pesa came to life, the purpose of M-Pesa was to solve a simple problem that we have in Kenya, or had before we came to life, which was moving money from the cities to the rural homes. So what would happen is that in the past, if I'm sending money back home, I would go to a bus driver, put the money in an envelope, and then hand it to them. And then when they get home, my family would then turn up at a given hour and collect the money. So bus drivers were really the mobile banks of back then. So what Safaricom did is, through the power of the mobile phone, to allow for the more flow of money across the entire networked community. And money now moves, digital money moves freely across the entire country. So Safaricom is the largest mobile money provider in Kenya. We have over 30 million customers on M-Pesa, 90% of all mobile money transactions flow through our platforms. And then across Africa, we have over 100 million customers. So that provides that rich ecosystem that we have continued to build on to drive various payment opportunities for transport, in agriculture, in education, and various other sectors. So what else are we doing to drive smart cities? So for us, we reflect on it from smart communities. Again, reflecting back on the challenges that we have in Kenya. The cities, of course, like in all other countries, develop to bring together commerce and other trade. But within those cities, we also have various informal communities that do end up setting up. So what have we done? So there's various solutions that we deploy take into consideration the formal and the informal communities. So on the formal side, working with the various county governments, for example, in water, to deploy smart water meters, which have helped reduce water wastage, helping also the counties to increase their revenue collection, which then in turn gets applied in various services. On the informal side, deploying various IoT solutions and wearables, helping those communities to be able to access water at affordable pricing using M-Pesa as a payment platform. On the education side, also working with various partners on a food program where we call it Food to Eat. So where the kids in the informal settlements, again using wearables and IoT platforms, are able to pay for their food using M-Pesa simply on a tap-to-pay basis. And their parents are able to get a message notifying them that the kid has accessed their meal for that day. If they don't get a report back, then they're able to check with their kids, why didn't you eat? What was the reason? So again, for us, SMART just extends to that. Also in the agricultural space, we are deploying an e-fertilizer program, which is allowing the government to distribute fertilizers, particularly to the low, small-scale farmers at affordable prices, allowing them to track that the exact the person who's entitled the fertilizer is the one that gets it at the affordable rate, ensuring then at a smallholder level we're able to boost agriculture. And there are also various other products that we have from our smart solutions in all those verticals as well. Again, as I mentioned, the outcome of all that is to transform the lives of our various Kenyans.
Thank you, Fred. Yes, I mean, we've at the GSMA Innovation Fund also supported a few of those startups and solutions. One of them, which is my favorite, is City Taps, where we went into this organization is essentially working with informal settlements, a house with like 4 or 5 families sharing the same tap. Piped water, and then you're using pay-as-you-go modes to kind of split the bills without fighting with each other, that you drew more or you drew less. Very, very innovative, where you're like kind of taking the utility water through to the last endpoint, and you're able to split it digitally and safely, securely, and efficiently. So thanks for that. Abhishek, on to you now. Similar questions. Any like pet projects, things that you're proud of as Airtel, where you've supported smart city solutions? India has been a fantastic market for that anyway.
Thank you for having me. I think building on to what Fred said, right? If I look at India, one of the most prominent use cases or prominent installations of smart city is the smart utility project, right? Where we are digitizing close to 250 million meters across the country for energy. And 2 challenges, right? One is the sheer scale of 250 million meters spread over 4,000 kilometers of stretch in any one direction. You need a pervasive network. And it's not easy to build out a single network that's that large, right? So a big role for telecom operators to sort of play there. The second challenge is, or the reason why this project was set up was because discoms or energy distribution companies were seeing losses. They were seeing pilferage, they were seeing collection costs, they were seeing just, deputing a person to go read a meter and come back sometimes would cost more than the bill of that month. Right? Just the sheer logistics of some of this, right? And the solution was easy. It was tested in the market, having a digital meter, right? But the implementation of this was hard. The discoms were losing money, so someone needed to fund the meter. Right? The users were going to fight you because everyone who's trying to do pilferage now needs to pay up what they really have to pay up, right? And the third problem was the discoms needed cash flow. So they came up with a plan to convert these meters from postpaid to prepaid, right? Which means that 250 million people for 1 month had to pay 2 bills. And sometimes it's hard to pay 2 bills, right, on energy. So I think just the sheer scale of the problem was amazing. We worked with a lot of discoms, not just to provide connectivity. A lot of operators are notoriously famous to only stop at what they do, which is we'll provide connectivity and go away and we'll just charge for it. I think the part that we really understood is to create a platform which includes the software services, includes the CapEx to OpEx conversion, includes connectivity, includes providing the SLA support that these discoms need for uptime, because energy needs to run all the time, right? Nobody remembers their energy provider. Like nobody remembers their connectivity provider till it stops working. Nobody wants to remember their energy provider as well, right? So having a pervasive network that works, a collections agency that does this work at zero loss, and the ability to distribute this activity across several hundred discoms who all are on a different technology stack was, that was the work that we set off to start. Very hard, took us close to 9 months just to bring them on board to come on the same specification, on the same template. But today we have close to 45 million meters in India that are live and are working on this technology. And the hope is that we will hit that 250 million mark in the next 2.5 years.
That's fantastic. And does it make business sense for you? If so, why? If not, how long before you see that it'll start making like proper business sense?
So it makes a lot of business sense for us. It was the business model was hard, and I'll tell you why. So if you look at the stack, right, it's a sandwich. You have connectivity, you have software, you have physical deployment of the meter. You then have billing. You also need cloud services. You need security because eventually it's personal data of that consumer, right? Just the purchasing currency for each of these products is different. You buy cloud using a virtual machine. You buy security using a license. You buy SIM using a monthly rental. You buy hardware using CapEx. Right? So just the currency is different. So the first problem that we solved was, can we bring all of this into a per meter, per month billing model? Right? And just offer one price. What we did was we abstracted out the OEMs to say you have to fit into a framework that builds value for us as an SI, builds value for the discom, right, in terms of both cash flow, because nobody's going to pay you for that meter up front, so you need to sort of finance that meter. So I think the outcome is very fulfilling, right? The model today works, and the entire ecosystem sort of makes money. And the discoms are happy because it took them some time, but when they saw the result of knowing exactly what their revenue is that month and being able to collect it was a big win, because you have predictability in that business.
Fabulous. That's great to hear. Fred, picking up on what Abhishek just said, they're talking about energy, which Airtel has picked up. How do you pick sectors that then, where off the entire city pile, this is a sector where I'm going to engage and probably it will make business sense for me? How do you go about that decision making, picking up business models that probably will be sensible for you?
As I said earlier, our purpose is to transform lives. So for us, we follow the need. That is what always informs which sector we get into. And what we find is that initially, you may not make money from that immediate adjacency, but we do make the money downstream, most of the time through our payments platform. Let me give an example. So at the moment, we are also in the energy space, where we are trying to move people from using charcoal and firewood into gas. So we have a company called MGas, where we have a pay-as-you-go model that allows the users, through an IoT platform, get the cylinder, which we deliver almost like on a milk run basis. And it's able to check how much gas is in the cylinder, and then be able to notify us when the cylinder needs to be replaced. And all the user needs is to tap a card. So how does that benefit us? So one, helps Kenya start moving forward on our various climate change initiatives. Two, it drives stickiness to our various products and to our platform. So on M-Pesa, all transactions of 150 shillings and below are free. That's about $1.50 of transactions are free. The daily earnings for most Kenyans about 100 shillings. That's about $1 a day. So you can imagine that the scale of what we're offering from a free perspective. But as you start empowering that individual's life, their life starts improving, and they quickly move to a chargeable scale. And they then tend to stick to our network, despite his subsidiary network in our country.
Partner network.
All right, and that's then how we're able to start generating income through the larger ecosystem. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Fred. Amy, on to you now. How is it looking for Basigo? You were talking about 29 buses that are rolling at the moment, and
49 on the road in
49.
Kenya. 6 in Rwanda.
And how many interests that you haven't been able to fulfill? What's your future plan as a company? How do you see yourself scaling? And how can entities like Safaricom, Airtel support you going forward?
Yeah, so the scale, let's just address that one first. So we have a goal of 1,000 buses in the next 3 years. We just raised our Series A funding last October, so that was $42 million, led by an African fund, Africa 50, who put in 24 with other existing investors, including CFAO, which is very useful working with them to do local assembly of the buses in Kenya and really grow manufacturing in Kenya. So this year, we made some big changes to the factory with the help of our investor, CFAO, which will allow us to go from production of 1 bus per week to 1 bus per day. And so we'll aim to finish the year with over 200 buses across Kenya and Rwanda. And we actually have 10 beautiful new buses on the water right now heading to Rwanda. So really excited to get those, because we work directly with the OEMs to design buses fit for the roads in Kenya and Rwanda. So that's what the future looks like. And in terms of how to get there, one of the big things that we need support on is how to revolutionize the experience for the passenger and the operator. So really smoothing out, I talked about digitization of the business for the bus operators. So the cash that they're receiving today from the passengers, they're also paying out to the various people that they need to pay to run the business. So you have different parking fees or different payments to the organizations that are maintaining the licenses for whichever routes you're running. Obviously, we've taken out fuel costs, so that's one cost that they're not having to manage, but they're doing third-party insurance. There's various costs that they're having to manage on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And once we digitize the fare collection from the passengers, then something that would be really great to work on, with the MNOs is digitizing and automating the management of their business. So really making it much smoother for them to do their fleet operations. Right now, you still find a situation where they're sending someone into town to collect fare from a bus driver in the middle of the day so that that person can then go to various different other offices to pay for some of these operating costs, So it's very expensive in terms of the people that they need to employ. It's very leaky because we're dealing with cash. And so there's big losses for them as a business. So these are really big opportunities just to clean up, not only from a climate perspective and emissions perspective, but just cleaning up the operations and cleaning up the business so that they can really invest back into their business and grow and change the way that people move around the city. And Another thing which, you mentioned is the IoT factor. So this is also a big difference that the EVs are bringing, is that we have telematics on board. And so we're getting a lot of insights, live insights from the buses that we use internally for our design with the OEMs, but also feeds into those tools that the operators can use. So working with the mobile providers to have SIM cards, which are reliably transmitting this data in a way that's financially scalable for us, because we really are, the price is still quite sensitive, right? We require a lot of money up front to buy the bus. Electric buses are much more expensive than combustion engine ones. And so we have to be really inventive with how we're pricing that for this industry, which is incredibly price sensitive. It's increasingly lower and lower margins. It's highly competitive. The bus providers, they maybe used to have some subsidies, which they don't have benefit of anymore. It's very easy for somebody in Kenya, it's relatively unregulated. So it's pretty easy for you to just have enough money to start running some buses and suddenly you're an operator. It's very important for us to make sure that pay-as-you-drive lease fee is as low as possible. And obviously the cost of having the telematics running on all of the buses and transmitting the data live enough that the insights are actually useful, all of that could get very expensive. So I think there's big opportunities to work directly to make that more scalable and affordable and pass that on to the operators.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. I think for this panel, we are running out of time, so we'll just open up for one question. I haven't had a chance to tie all of the information up together, so that onus is on you. So whoever is going to ask the question needs to bring all of this together. No pressure. Anyone? Kenichi there at the back.
I just wanted to ask the operators about partnerships. You've talked about, how you have tried to move up the value chain from connectivity to platforms and the rest. But are you partnering with, other suppliers, developers to move up, or are you developing those capabilities in-house?
Maybe I can start. All right. In the case of Safaricom, it's a mix of both. We are developing some of that capacity in-house, but the larger component of what we have deployed is through partnership. It allows us to move faster, and it allows us then to be able to scale a lot faster with the capabilities of others.
I think very similar for us at Airtel. It was hard initially to get the partners on board because because the stack is pretty wide, right? So you also have to get them to talk to each other. So I think that's where we stepped in to say we will write the framework of how the partners will come together, and then open it sort of up for competition to say, give them fair play. For example, for cloud, we have all the hyperscalers as partner, right? And for the digital services part, we actually got down and funded a startup to build that out. So I think a bunch of models can bring this together. But coming back, I think the telco or the operator needs to be the one that takes the lead in bringing the partners together. And that's important because eventually a partner is always a functional expert of their domain, right? But you need a larger horizontal player. I think that's where the MNO should take a leadership role.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for this. I've learned so much today myself, having worked on that project. Still, there's so much learning. Thank you so much, everyone. And I'd like you to take your seats here, and I'll pass it on to George for the next panel, which is going to be, hopefully, as fascinating as this one. Let's see.
Thank you.
Thanks, Akanksha. I'm just going to change slides quickly. There you go. And with me on stage, I will have Alexandra Vidal Dordello, who's the Research and Project Manager for the Global Cities Program at the Barcelona Center for International Affairs, and also Thomas Odhiambo, the Director for Special Programs at the ICT Authority in Kenya. So Thomas, thanks for joining us here. We're really happy to have you. I mean, Kenya is often seen as a leader when it comes to digital innovation, and I think regulators and government has a lot to do with it. So can you talk a bit about how you can effectively create an enabling environment for private sector companies and innovators to play a role in the smart cities ecosystem in Kenya?
Thank you for having me here. I think it's great to be in Barcelona. I think for us in Kenya, we have been running, the government is driving a digital transformation agenda, and we have a 10-year master plan. We are on the second year, very ambitious, including doing 100,000 kilometer fiber. And in the plan, which we co-created with the private sector, we sat with the telcos, for example, my friend here, and out of the 100,000 kilometer fiber that government intends to achieve, for example, we have assigned a portion, 48,000 kilometer. We hope that will be taken up by private sector. We will do 52,000, but in that we hope to do only a certain part. Remember when we were developing the master plan, we sat with them. They told us where the issues were. They couldn't reach the far-flung places. It's not economically viable. We said we'd go there. And in areas where they had interest, we left them to them. In fact, we have a situation where we build the infrastructure, we lease some of it to them. In areas where they already built the infrastructure, we lease some of it from there. So I think, in a way, collaborative approaches and dealing with the private sector as much as possible is an approach we've taken, and we're saying for government, for us, it's actually just a stopgap. At the end of the day, we'd be very happy to deliver services and get all the facilitations through the private sector, because at the end of the day, that's really not our business. But where it is not cost effective, then we do come in, and we make sure we do that by having a very robust regulatory and policy framework, which is also, we do it with the private sector so that we're able to give them what they can, what they need to offer the services, so that together we can serve the businesses and the citizens who need our services.
Thanks a lot, Thomas. Alexandra, the one word that you probably see the most here at MWC today is AI. I think there's probably an AI stand in every hall, and you could probably play some games around how many times you see it. But my question is, you're running the Global Urban AI Atlas program, and have done a lot of research on this. So could you describe the program a bit and help demystify a bit what we mean when we talk about AI solutions in cities?
Yeah, thank you, George, for having me here also. From TIDOP, which is an international relations think tank based in Barcelona, we lead this global observatory of urban artificial intelligence with the support of the City Coalitions for Digital Rights, which is a city network with more than 45 cities standing for digital rights. And with the support of the City Council of Barcelona and UN Habitat. From this observatory, we basically research on urban AI, as its name indicates, but specifically on what are city governments doing with this technology, and from an ethical standpoint. So the goal is to promote systems that are fair, sustainable, transparent, accountable, cybersecure, and so on and so forth. And from this research, we basically have this flagship project, which is the Atlas of Urban AI. It's an interactive map, and it's public, open for everyone to see, where we basically map out what cities are doing in this regard throughout the world, from this ethical standpoint. We built this atlas and launched it in 2022, and then in 2023 we basically collected all of the data and analyzed what we could see, what trends we could find in urban AI worldwide. And what we found was several findings that I actually want to share with you that basically indicate that transparency and privacy protection are the most commonly applied principles. When cities want to implement this technology, they pay specific attention to these two principles. We also found that this technology is not only being used by big cities such as New York and Singapore, which of course they are, but also by small and medium-sized cities that are also getting hold of this technology and also are applying it for solving their urban challenges. We also found that this is almost always a multi-stakeholder endeavor, and this is very important, I think, because it appears to be a public-private partnership always. This is also because cities generally have financial and technical constraints, so they cannot build their own AI solutions. So they usually go to the private sector and are like, hey, I've got this problem. So they procure the solution from the private sector. And this is very important here, I think, because like we've seen all of these amazing projects, and city governments are particularly interested in these types of solutions. Then we also found that adoption and governance have a significant gap. So we see that many cities are adopting this technology, but not that many are governing its use. And I think this is going to shift in the years to come. We're already seeing it at the international level, but also at the local level. Because until now, we've had a more pragmatic approach, so solution-oriented approach. I have this problem, I want to solve it. Okay, this technology is amazing for it, so I will just use it. But now we're seeing that there's a pressure on, okay, we need to govern this, because actually there's some backlash that we're having sometimes using this technology, and we have to take into account several ethical principles. Otherwise, we're going to start using this technology and found that like we're generating other problems that we weren't foreseeing. And so, yeah, I think this kind of like is the trend that we're heading to. This creation of policy mechanisms and governance frameworks that cities are going to start implementing. Right now, our atlas just shows like 20% of cities are doing this. And this is just expected to grow. So
basically, you're saying, you know, regulators are in a way playing catch up to the innovations that are taking place. Maybe just one follow-up question, just because obviously we just heard from a lot of private sector perspectives. How do you think the private sector can better position itself to actually play a conducive role to local governments and also understand their constraints and objectives more effectively?
Okay, so I feel like the private sector are doing what they do best, which is basically innovate. So they're on the right track in that sense. So I feel like the ball is more on the other side, like on local governments. So they will always reach out to in general, they will reach out to the private sector because of these financial constraints and technical constraints. So this partnership is inevitable. So what I'm seeing is basically from the local perspective side, what they want to do is try to regulate this partnership so it benefits both of them. Right. So of course the private sector has a obvious benefit, which is using their AI solutions in the city. So it's a large scale model. And from the side of the city councils, it's beneficial because they then can access solutions for their urban challenges. But then what we're seeing is that many cities, to create this partnership, they're using procurement clauses. So they put these clauses within the contracts of the collaboration that they have with the private sector in order to make clear what they need the private sector to provide. And this makes for a stronger partnership somehow, and it also sometimes prevents, of course, the private sector to open their code, which generally they don't want to do. So it creates a way more seamlessly collaboration. Yeah,
really interesting. The topic of procurement clauses really resonates. We've seen that in some of our research as well, especially on ride-hailing companies, that a lot of governments, into the clauses of ride-hailing companies, there'll be certain data sharing clauses that will be included so that transport authorities can also use the data from ride-hailing companies in order to engage in transport planning. Thomas, I want to get back to you and ask a bit about some of the successful public-private partnerships you've seen in Kenya when it comes to smart cities. I know one project that a lot of people are talking about, for instance, is the Konza Technopolis project, for example, but I'm sure there are many others. If you can talk a bit about that, as well as other successful public-private partnerships and how you were able to craft those.
Thank you for that. I think for the idea of involving private sector, I think is where it all starts. And for Kenya, we have a robust legal framework. We have PPP policy and act, which provides, avenues for engagement for PPP opportunities in the country. And we had about 3-4 years ago the first toll road, which initially the indications were it wasn't going to be successful, but it's been 27.1 kilometers just across the city. It's been phenomenal, and that was on design, finance, build, maintain, and transfer basis. That's one of the models. Right now, there are even engagements between Mombasa, Nairobi, again for another build, operate, transfer model. So there are 14 flavors in the framework, and we are using those. In fact, even now, government policies to find ways of working with the private sector to cost-share. So, of course, we're doing the Konza Smart City, the Technopolis, in collaboration with partners. So we have bilateral agreements, of course, with other governments, but we also have companies, private companies there, and we do cost-share agreements with them, where they provide services, which we resell again, even within government, and we do share the revenue. Even in government now, there's a lot of encouragement. We have, for example, systems. I'll mention one, integrated population registration system, which is run by the Ministry of Interior. This is a facility that allows private sector companies, banks, to authenticate citizens and foreigners before, let's say, they open bank accounts. And they do pay a small amount for each access. And this again goes back to revamping the system and making sure this is rolled out more. We're also experimenting with support from the World Bank, infrastructure development, because we've realized when we have, even as we aspire to do 100,000 kilometer of fiber, GOK now we have only about 14,000. So there's a huge headroom there. So we've noticed that we do spend a lot of money to put in the infrastructure, which we try to resell some to the telcos. They lease a bit of the cores, for example, but they end up taking only a little bit. We've put in a lot more, then we maintain it, still cost. So we're trying to have a situation where we deal with the private sector through an auction system. We identify a route, and we say we want to do so many cores, for example, and how much do you want to put in, what's your appetite, and how much can we put in, and everybody comes. So we end up with somebody who we co-share the infrastructure, but they maintain it, and we only use what we need to use as government, because we've been over-investing and we can't resell. So that and other approaches, so that really, at the end of the day, we maximize the value for the citizen. We don't, and we're able to use that resources to do other areas, and we involve the private sector more and more. I think that's a route. If we can find a way so that it's easy also for the private sector to participate, I think suddenly we have a win-win, and everybody is okay.
No, it's really interesting how you've been speaking about the different PPP frameworks and making sure you use the right one for the right context, and I think that's definitely part of it. I just want to get back to one point that came up earlier in Alex's contribution and get both of your thoughts on this question, which is, this notion that regulators are playing catch-up in the context of disruptive innovation. So if you could say like a couple of points, 2 to 3 ways in which innovators can effectively play catch-up and govern disruptive innovations like AI effectively without stifling some of the potential associated with the use cases. What would you say from your experience? What would be some effective strategies with regards to this, from both of your perspectives?
Should I start? Okay.
Sure.
Well, we've seen that the cities that are trying to regulate like AI have put in place several types of, well, a vast array of policy mechanisms to try to build these comprehensive frameworks to govern the use of AI that they're doing. And so many of these measures are actually social-technical, so they're more social and technical in nature. So they don't talk about regulating the code or the architecture of the models. It's more about how you use this technology. And so we find that, for example, they create strategies where they adhere to certain ethical principles that the city must kind of like respect in order to use this technology. They create guidelines or handbooks for example, the use of generative AI by part of the municipality, like ChatGPT or other types of text-to-text or language models that they're using. They create independent and external advisory bodies. So of course they're not experts themselves, so they find different types of experts, multidisciplinary, they bring them together for them to oversee their use of AI. We see also more technical measures, such as human rights assessments or bias analysis that they ask external providers to do to these systems. And we also, well, we'll see if I'm leaving something behind. Yep, also the creation of internal protocols for the city councils to use when they procure AI or use AI. And so these are some of the guardrails that they're placing in order to be able to use this technology while bringing ease to the citizens that they're actually doing it in a safe way.
Oh, great examples, and I like the sort of concept of guardrails and also the awareness that a lot of, obviously, municipalities don't have AI experts within them themselves, so they actually need to, get experts on board through advisory boards and so on. Thomas, your perspective on that?
Yes, I think maybe we need an AI solution for this problem, because it's been there and it's not going to, it's getting worse, I think, because the level of changes that we experience. We just launched the National Digital Master Plan 2 years ago. Right now we are finalizing on the AI strategy for the country. So, and I'm sure by next year we will be doing something else. It will be on blockchain. We all know it will be there because of what AI will have made us become as a world, in 1 year, 2 years' time, because that is where we are. So I think we just have to be more agile in our approach. Government, for example, I think we're on the spotlight because we tend to be bureaucratic, slow. We really make sure everything is, and that time may not be available unless, of course, we are the ones with the latest AI and we're able to be slightly ahead of everybody else. So I think the approach, we possibly will the turnaround time of some of the policy documents we do, the processes that we use, public participation, maybe we even use other platforms and so on, so that it is faster. But I don't think we have any option. This will keep coming, the necessity to have policy, laws to regulate AI, standards, ICT authority, we do standards, we need standards for everybody, for schools and everybody, so that then as a society we're able to tap in and exploit, these emerging technologies. And this will continue. This is, I think, where we are.
Yeah, it's great, and I also I really like that you sort of highlight the necessity to move fast, and that in this sort of exponential age of technological innovation, that will just continue. Also, thought it was interesting what you mentioned in the beginning. I don't know if it was a joke or you meant it, but actually leveraging AI for regulatory purposes itself. So using the very thing you're trying to regulate in order to come up with better regulations as well. I know that a lot of regulators are looking at that as well. Just wanted to pause here to give the audience the chance to ask any questions. Please feel free to raise your hand and we'll get you a mic. Any questions on governing and regulating smart cities from the audience? Well, I will have one more question in that case. We've been talking a lot about public-private partnerships, regulation, and so on. What I would like to know a bit more about is, the role of startups. We have Amy here representing a really interesting company in Basigo. So one problem that we face a lot with the innovation fund startups that we support in the GSMA is that a lot of governments only look at incumbents when it comes to big projects that they want to engage in. You need to showcase that you have had a track record for 15 years, that you've delivered different solutions effectively so that the government can trust that you will be delivering that project. But the fact is that a lot of early stage innovators, they might have a better idea that might be more cost effective, but they don't have the 15 years track record to show for it. So how do you think about kind of using local procurement, public-private partnership in order to stimulate not just the kind of big corporates in your countries, but also the kind of startup ecosystem? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that's very right. And of course, we are very happy Basigo is really going places. We are used to the big boys like Safaricom leading the innovations and supporting innovations, and they have a large budget of their to R&D to fast track that. Yeah. But of course, also like in Kenya, we have a very big population, youth, very innovative, but as you say, they may not have the means or support to really make sure that their innovations see light of day. So one of the things we propose as an authority is that we involve them at the procurement, actually, that they're able to participate in procurement and sort of test. And we've seen this in solutions that are being used by government agencies that were developed by interns. We run a one-year interns, computer science graduates intern. Those interns typically produce, wherever they go, they do complete systems which the agency adopts and uses. And usually we don't have like a revenue share model, the gentleman or lady develops and the agency runs with it. So we are proposing a situation where these youths with their solutions can actually participate in procurement, if you like, that solves a problem in a ministry or an agency. Once that has been proven, then they are compensated in that. So it's like a bit opposite. Typically, the government works in, we have the money, we look for a solution, then we get who is the solution, cheapest price, then we sign and we pay. So we're trying to have a situation where they enjoy the solution. If it works, they are now able to pay the youth or the innovator for that particular, and we hope it will go somewhere along the lines, of course, apart from us taking them in board and, mentoring them in the process.
Interesting. And I'll get to you in a second. Just to react really quickly, one of the startups that was quite successful in our innovation fund cohort is called WonderKid, which is a Kenyan startup founded by Kenyans that is providing meter reading solutions as well as digitized complaint management systems for water utilities across Kenya. And for that startup to actually take off, now it's operating in over 5 African countries, working with over 20 water utilities. It required 4 Kenyan water utilities to take a chance on this young company, right? And actually help them demonstrate the solution in an ecosystem. The water utility ecosystem is quite risk averse and conservative, right? So that's why it's quite interesting to hear about those examples. Alex, over to you.
I just wanted to add to what Thomas said, that I feel like that's also the case for cities that are a bit more flexible in that sense, because they're used to kind of having pilots of different stakeholders, their hubs for innovation and talent and different stakeholders. So in general, they're more used to maybe piloting solutions and technologies that do not have this 15 years of experience, but that come from startups or students that are trying to create new solutions. So I feel like this is easily given in the city context of smart cities such as Barcelona or Amsterdam or New York.
Absolutely, yeah. Cities are, in a way, also laboratories of innovation in which you can test things out that then can scale to other cities and across countries as a whole. And yeah, thanks so much for providing your perspectives. I think we'll end here. I want to thank both of you, the previous panelists as well, and the audience that came by to listen. If you want to stay in touch with us, I'm just going to quickly change over the next slide. You'll see an email address and a QR code there. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Appreciate that. And you can use that to stay in touch with us. If you have any follow-up questions about our work, feel free to reach out. And as I mentioned, this report on smart city solutions in low and middle income countries will come out in May, likely, of this year. So please watch out for that. And yeah, thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of MWC. Thanks for getting it started with us here. I'm sure you'll have a lot of steps to take from now until the end of the conference. Cheers. Thanks.